was mid-January. Winter in northern Ontario had been brutal that year. I'd gone up to my uncle's cabin near Thunder Bay to get some peace and do a bit of solo hunting. The cabin was secluded. Only a narrow trail connected it to a barely there road. The snow was thick. It clung to the tall pines. The sky had been a flat, unchanging gray for days. I'd always found something calming in the isolation of the wilderness. But that week, something felt wrong. I'd been there for 2 days when I noticed the forest was unusually quiet. Now, in winter, the woods can be silent. But this was different. An oppressive stillness. As if the whole forest was holding its breath. The only sound was the crunch of snow underfoot and the occasional creak of trees bowing under the weight of ice. On the third night, I was jolted awake by a sound that I couldn't place. It was like a distant wailing, almost human but distorted, like someone calling out in pain but stretched and hollow. It echoed through the trees. I lay there, trying to convince myself it was just the wind playing tricks on my mind. But the cry came again, closer this time. It sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. The next morning, I went outside to check the traps I'd set a few hundred yards from the cabin. The sky was overcast. It cast an eerie gray light over everything. As I walked through the snow, I noticed something strange. There were tracks leading away from one of the traps. Large footprints, like a person's, but with claw marks digging into the snow around them. They looked wrong, somehow too long. The spacing was unnatural, as if whoever or whatever had made them was struggling to walk. I followed the tracks. My heart pounded harder with every step. They led into the forest, veering off toward a rocky outcrop I'd seen a few times before. The tracks were erratic, like whoever made them was stumbling or limping. I could feel the unease growing in my gut. Every hunter knows that following strange tracks alone is asking for trouble, but something about them compelled me forward. As I neared the outcrop, the forest closed in tighter. The trees loomed overhead like silent watchers. Then, I smelled it, a foul, sour stench, like rotting meat mixed with something I couldn't place. My stomach turned. I nearly gagged. I froze when I heard a crunch in the snow just beyond the rocks. I crouched low, moving slowly until I could peer around the edge of the outcrop. What I saw there is burned into my memory forever. Was a figure, hunched over with its back to me. It looked vaguely human but was impossibly thin. Long skeletal limbs seemed too long for its body. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched tightly over its bones. Patches of what looked like frost clung to its bare, emaciated frame. I could see its spine protruding sharply. Each vertebra was clearly visible. Its limbs bent at strange angles, as if broken and poorly reset. The creature was gnawing on something. A deer carcass, torn open and half-eaten. I watched in horror as it lifted its head. It revealed a gaunt face with sunken eyes, dark as obsidian, and a mouth too wide, stretching nearly to its jawline. Its teeth were jagged, yellowed. It made wet, slurping sounds as it tore into the meat. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed. Suddenly its head snapped up. It turned in my direction, and those eyes, they locked onto mine. There was an intelligence there, something dark and ancient, far beyond anything I could understand. It wasn't just looking at me. It felt like it was seeing inside me, assessing me, weighing me. My heart hammered as I slowly backed away, each step calculated, trying to make as little noise as possible. But as I moved, I stepped on a fallen branch. The loud snap echoed through the silence. In a split second, the creature's mouth stretched open. It let out that same horrible wail I'd heard the night before, but now it was right there, surrounding me, vibrating through my bones. I didn't wait to see if it would follow. I turned and bolted. My boots sank into the snow, making it harder to move as quickly as I wanted to. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the underbrush. Each step was loud and erratic. I didn't dare look back. I just kept running. My lungs burned from the icy air. My mind was consumed by raw terror. I reached the cabin. I threw myself inside and slammed the door, locking it behind me. I grabbed my rifle, heart pounding. I backed away from the door, aiming at it in case that thing tried to follow. 4 hours. I sat there, rifle trained on the door, listening. Occasionally, I'd hear movement outside, a scraping sound along the wall, like claws dragging slowly across the wood. At some point, the noises stopped. I stayed awake all night, gripping the rifle until my fingers felt numb. When morning finally came, I dared to peek outside. There were tracks all around the cabin, deep and erratic, circling it as if it had been pacing, waiting for me to come out. I didn't waste any time. I packed up, got into my truck, and drove out as fast as the snow-covered roads would allow. To this day, I don't know what I encountered out there. Some people I've told say it was just a bear, maybe a trick of the light, my mind playing games. But I know what I saw. That thing was no bear, no animal I could recognize. It was something unnatural, something that shouldn't exist. Some say the Wendigo is a spirit, a creature born of starvation and despair, transforming those who succumb to cannibalism in the unforgiving wilderness. After that encounter, I believe it. I don't go out alone anymore, and I stay far away from the places the locals whisper about. There are things out there in the wild that we can't understand, things that belong to an older, darker part of this world, and once you've seen them, you're never truly alone.